Ethan never asked for an alien maid. He wasn't the type to enjoy help. He liked doing things alone, quietly, efficiently, and with as little human interaction as possible. His quarters on the remote colony of Lura 9 were proof of that. Simple, clean, and filled with the soft hum of machines he had built himself. He had come to this planet to work as an engineer, repairing atmospheric stabilizers and communication towers scattered across the endless plains of pale orange dust. The world was lonely, but it suited him. Until the day a knock came on his door, followed by a voice he didn't recognize, soft, melodic, and clearly not human. When he opened the door, he expected to find a courier or a technician. Instead, standing there was a tall, graceful alien woman with silver eyes that shimmered like water. Her skin had a faint blue hue, smooth and faintly luminescent under the artificial light. She wore a simple white uniform with the insignia of the Intercultural Service Program. Her long silver hair was tied neatly behind her head, and in her hands she held a datapad that displayed her designation. "Greetings." "Ethan Hale," she said with a bow that looked both elegant and slightly awkward. "My name is Elira. I have been assigned as your domestic assistant for the next lunar cycle." Ethan blinked, confused. "My what?" "Your maid," she replied with a polite smile. "I will maintain your quarters, prepare sustenance, and assist in environmental management." He rubbed the back of his neck, unsure what to say. "I didn't request any help. The colony administration assigned me," she said softly. "Your performance record shows extended work hours and minimal social activity. They believe assistance would be beneficial." Ethan sighed. "That's none of their business," he muttered, stepping aside anyway. "Fine, come in. Just don't break anything." Elira stepped inside, her bare feet making almost no sound on the metal floor. She looked around the small living space, taking in the details. The organized tools, the half-assembled drone on the counter, the walls lined with spare parts. "You live efficiently," she observed. "That's one word for it," he replied. The first few hours passed quietly. Elira moved gracefully but strangely, like she was mimicking human motions she had only seen in a tutorial video. She would pick up objects carefully, study them as if uncertain of their purpose, and sometimes drop them by accident. A screwdriver rolled off the table and clattered to the floor. She bent down slowly to pick it up, her movements cautious, her expression serious, almost scientific. "Sorry," she murmured, holding it out to him. "Gravity here feels different." "It's not that different," Ethan said, taking it from her. "You get used to it." She nodded and went back to work, cleaning the kitchen surface with gentle strokes. But within minutes, a metallic cup slipped from her hand, hit the floor and spun before settling. She froze again, looking at it as though it had betrayed her. Then she knelt and picked it up just as slowly as before. Ethan tried to hide his smile. "You sure you're trained for this?" "I completed all simulation modules," she replied without looking at him. "Perhaps I require more." Live experience, he didn't argue. There was something almost endearing about her clumsiness. She was clearly trying her best, even if her attempt seemed oddly deliberate. He chalked it up to cultural differences. Maybe her species wasn't used to manual labor. By evening, she had managed to tidy the place surprisingly well. She even cooked, using ingredients from the colony's nutrition packs and somehow turning them into something that smelled real. Ethan hadn't had a home-cooked meal in months, and when he tasted it, he had to admit it wasn't bad. Elira sat across from him, watching carefully as he ate, her silver eyes wide with curiosity. "Do you always stare at people while they eat?" he asked. "Only when I am learning," she said. "I need to understand your preferences." "My preferences? I don't really have any. Food is food. Humans say that," she replied softly. "But they mean something else." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And what do they mean?" She looked at him thoughtfully. They care more than they admit." He didn't respond. There was something unsettling about how quickly she could read emotion into ordinary words. It reminded him she wasn't human. She looked almost human. Too human. But her thoughts came from a place entirely alien. After dinner, Elira offered to clean up. Within seconds, the sound of another object hitting the floor echoed again. Ethan turned to see her kneeling slowly to pick up a plate, her long silver hair falling forward. She seemed embarrassed, muttering an apology, but her face was unreadable. When she rose, she caught Ethan looking, and for a second their eyes met. Her expression softened. "I am sorry," she said again. On my world, we handle things differently. It's fine, Ethan replied, though part of him wondered why she seemed to drop things only when he was near. That night, he couldn't sleep. The hum of the ventilation was steady, but his thoughts weren't. He kept thinking about her, about the calm voice, the strange way she studied him, the deliberate pauses before she spoke. There was something she wasn't saying. The next morning he found her standing near the glass dome that looked out over the horizon. She was watching the twin suns rise, her eyes glowing faintly in the light. The air shimmered with dust storms in the distance. She looked beautiful, but in a distant, lonely way, like a painting that belonged to another world. You don't sleep? Ethan asked, stepping closer. We meditate instead, she said. It is quieter. He joined her by the window. You ever get homesick? Sometimes, she said softly. But I wanted to see what kindness looks like. Her words caught him off guard. What do you mean? She turned to him, her expression unreadable. On my planet, everything is based on status and service. We do not do things for one another unless it serves balance. We do not forgive errors. We do not understand mercy. And that's why you joined this program? He asked. Yes, my people wanted to learn how humans handle imperfection. They say humans make mistakes every day and still manage to live with them. I wanted to see if that is true. He thought about that for a moment. So dropping things is part of your research? Her eyes widened slightly. Then she smiled, a quiet, almost playful smile. Maybe? Ethan laughed, shaking his head. You're testing me, aren't you? I am observing, she said, pretending to look serious. Your patience level is impressive so far. So this was all a test? The cups, the plates, everything? Only a little, she said with a tiny shrug. You did not yell. You did not insult me. You even helped. Most subjects become frustrated within the first hour. I'm not most subjects, he replied. I noticed, she said quietly. After that, their days fell into an easy rhythm. Alira continued her duties, cooking, cleaning, organizing his tools, and yes, occasionally dropping things. But each time she did, it no longer felt random. It became a kind of game between them. He would raise an eyebrow when something hit the floor, and she would smile faintly as if to say, you passed again. He began to enjoy her company more than he expected. They talked about everything. Her home world's glowing forests, his Earth childhood, the stars they both looked at but from different skies. Sometimes she would pause mid-sentence, her expression distant as if remembering something painful. When he asked, she always changed the subject. One evening, after a long day repairing power converters, Ethan found her humming softly while polishing a tool. The tune was strange, haunting but peaceful. That song, he said. What is it? It's an old Seltheran lullaby, she said. It means rest without fear. Mothers sing it to their young. Did your mother sing it to you? Alira hesitated before nodding. Before the purity reforms. After that, music was considered inefficient. He frowned. Inefficient? How can something like that be inefficient? She looked down at her hands. On Selthera, emotion leads to disorder. We are taught to suppress it. Mistakes are punished because they reveal weakness. That is why I was chosen for this program. They said I was too emotional. Ethan was silent for a moment. Sounds like you were just human. She smiled at that, a real smile this time. Maybe that is why I wanted to understand your kind. The next morning, he woke to the sound of her voice. She was standing by the door, holding a data pad, her face serious. Ethan, she said quietly, a message arrived. The colony board wants me to send my weekly behavioral report. And? He asked, still half asleep. I do not want to, she said. If I send it, they will know you are not reacting as expected. They might reassign me, Ethan sat up. You mean take you away? She nodded. Yes. For reasons he couldn't explain, that thought bothered him more than it should have. Then don't send it, he said. That is disobedience, she whispered. But maybe it is worth it. He met her gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, a quiet understanding that their connection had moved beyond experiment and duty. It was now something personal, something real. That night, as he prepared to rest, he heard a faint crash again. He turned to see Alira kneeling on the floor, picking up a fallen cup. But this time she wasn't pretending to study him. She looked lost in thought, her movements slow, her eyes distant. You okay? He asked. She nodded, then whispered, I keep dropping things. Maybe because I am learning what it means to let go. Ethan didn't fully understand, but he felt the weight of her words. He watched her quietly, realizing she wasn't clumsy at all. She was changing, feeling things she wasn't supposed to feel. And for the first time, the morning on Lura 9 began like any other, with the twin suns climbing over the horizon and casting warm light across the endless plains of orange dust. Ethan woke to the soft humming of machines and the gentle rustle of movement in his quarters. Elira was already awake, kneeling carefully on the floor to retrieve a small toolkit she had dropped while checking the calibrations on his repair drone. She moved slowly, deliberately, almost ceremoniously, her long silver hair falling forward in a cascade of shimmering strands. "Good morning," Ethan said, rubbing his eyes. "I see the dropping continues." Elira looked up, her silver eyes meeting his with a faint glow. "It is a part of my learning process," she said. "Every object I release is a lesson. Every recovery is understanding." Ethan smiled, sitting on the edge of his bed. "You make it sound noble, but it just looks clumsy." "Clumsy," she repeated softly, tilting her head as if testing the sound of the word. "Interesting. On Selthara, clumsiness is a sign of weakness. Here, it appears, human," he laughed. "I suppose humans value mistakes differently." "Yes," she said. "They are forgiving in ways my people do not understand." Her words hung in the air as Ethan watched her rise, carrying the recovered tools back to the shelf with painstaking care. There was a quiet grace in her movements, even when she appeared awkward. Every motion was measured, like she was performing a ritual he didn't fully comprehend. And yet he noticed a subtle pattern in her behavior. She only seemed to drop items when he was present, as though each mishap was a test, or perhaps a conversation without words. The day passed with their usual routine. Elira cleaned, organized, and repaired small items around the quarters. She cooked a simple breakfast, adjusted the climate controls, and even managed to reassemble a tiny repair drone that had malfunctioned the day before. Yet throughout it all, she continued to drop things, each time apologizing softly and picking them up with deliberate slowness. Ethan began to wonder if there was more to this than mere accident. By mid-morning, he decided to confront her. "Elira," he said, leaning against the counter, "are you dropping things on purpose?" She paused, tilting her head in thought. "I am observing," she admitted finally. "Your reactions, your patience, your tone. This is part of my assessment." Ethan blinked. "Assessment? You mean I'm being tested?" "Not in the way you think," she said, walking over and setting a tray of clean dishes on the counter. "I was assigned to learn about human empathy and response to imperfection. The dropping is an experiment. You are not simply my companion. You are my subject." Ethan stared at her, trying to process the revelation. He had suspected there was something unusual about her behavior, but he hadn't expected this. "So, everything you've done since you arrived, it's all been for a report?" "Initially, yes," she said softly. "But I am learning something else now. Something my programming did not anticipate." He frowned. "What's that?" Her eyes softened. "That your kindness is genuine. That patience can exist without obligation. That forgiveness can be instinctive." Ethan didn't know how to respond. There was an honesty in her voice that left no room for sarcasm or humor. She was not teasing him, not manipulating him, but speaking in the language of someone discovering something entirely new. About him, about herself, about both of them. The rest of the day passed in a quiet, almost reflective mood. Ethan worked on his repair projects while Elira continued her tasks, occasionally dropping something small, a cup or a tool, and retrieving it carefully. But now he noticed that the act no longer irritated him. Instead, it felt like a rhythm, a strange dance of learning and observation. He found himself smiling at her mistakes, not because they were funny, but because they revealed a side of her that no one had ever seen before. By evening, the colony's artificial lights dimmed in preparation for the long night. Ethan sat by the observation dome, staring out at the endless plains of orange dust. Elira approached him quietly, carrying a small tray of synthesized tea. She placed it gently on the table, then sat down opposite him. "Do you ever wonder why your people are so forgiving?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Why you tolerate mistakes that would anger others?" Ethan thought about it. Maybe it's because humans understand failure. Everyone makes mistakes. We know it's part of life. Anger doesn't fix anything, but understanding can. Elira nodded slowly. I see on Selthera mistakes are punishable. Emotion is suppressed. Mercy is rare. I was trained to observe and record. But with you, I feel something different. I want to learn. Without obligation. Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. Here was an alien, sent to study him, and yet she was revealing more about herself than he had ever imagined. Then you're learning the hardest lesson, he said softly. Empathy isn't taught, it's felt. She tilted her head, absorbing his words. Felt, she repeated. Yes, that is accurate. For the first time, their silence was comfortable, filled not with tension but with mutual understanding. Outside, the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the floor and illuminating Elira's silver hair with a faint glow. Ethan watched her, noting how her eyes reflected both curiosity and something he couldn't name. There was depth there, a complexity that made her more than a maid, more than a subject, more than a mystery. Over the next few days, Ethan noticed subtle changes. Elira's dropping of objects became less like a test and more like a reflection of thought. Sometimes she would drop something and pause, staring at it on the floor as though lost in memory. Sometimes she would pick it up and smile faintly, as if sharing a secret she couldn't voice. Ethan began to realize that she was not merely studying him. She was discovering herself in relation to him. One afternoon, while he was repairing a communication module, Elira dropped a small sensor. It rolled across the floor and came to rest at Ethan's foot. He looked down and saw her eyes on him, wide and unblinking. I did not intend to drop it, she said softly, but it seems my mind was elsewhere. He knelt to pick it up, holding it in his hand. Then your mind is free to wander. That's not a mistake. Her lips curved slightly, a quiet acknowledgement. You are different from others. You do not scold. You do not scorn. You observe. You understand. Ethan laughed quietly. I suppose that's my job now. To understand you, she nodded. Yes, and I wish to understand you as well. That evening, she surprised him with a small tray of freshly prepared food. The scent was familiar yet foreign, spices he had never smelled before blending into something comforting. Ethan tasted it carefully, noting the subtle flavors. This is good, he said. It is an attempt, she replied. On Selthera, flavor is functional. Here it can be enjoyable. I am learning, Ethan smiled. You're doing well. Better than well. She bent slightly to pick up a fallen utensil, moving slowly as always. But this time Ethan noticed the small glimmer of pride in her eyes. She was not embarrassed or nervous. She was simply learning and perhaps enjoying the process. That night, as they both looked out at the stars, Ethan realized how much his quiet life had changed in a week. He had expected solitude and efficiency. He had received something else entirely. An alien presence that was more alive, more human than he could have imagined. And with each small mishap, each deliberate dropping of an object, she had taught him patience, curiosity, and an unspoken connection that he had not known he needed. You are not like anyone I have met, he said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. I am learning, she replied softly, her gaze distant, learning what it is to trust, to forgive, to feel. Ethan smiled, feeling a strange warmth spread through him. Then we are both learning. Outside, the twin suns vanished beneath the horizon, leaving only the endless, quiet expanse of orange plains. Inside, in the small quarters of Lura 9, a human and an alien shared a space filled with curiosity, discovery, and the slow, careful building of trust. And for the first time, Ethan did not feel lonely. Not with her here. Not with Elira bending over slowly, dropping things and somehow, inexplicably, changing the rhythm of his life. He didn't know what the future would hold. Alien programs, colony rules, or unforeseen dangers. But at that moment, with her soft silver eyes meeting his and her hands gently returning a fallen tool, he realized something important. Life, even on a remote, dusty planet, could surprise him. Life could be strange, beautiful, and utterly human. And for the first time, he welcomed the unknown, because it had come in the form of her. And Elira, watching him from across the quarters, felt the same. Not as a maid, not as an experiment, but as someone learning what it truly meant to connect, to care, to belong. The days that followed settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and strange for Ethan. He rose early, walked through the orange plains, and repaired the scattered machines that kept the colony alive. Alara followed closely behind, carrying tools, checking readings, and sometimes, inevitably, dropping something she had just picked up. But now Ethan no longer saw her actions as clumsy. He understood that each small mishap was a part of her learning, a subtle dance of trust and patience. One morning, as the pale light of Lura 9's twin suns spread across the desert, Ethan noticed her standing near the edge of a maintenance platform, a datapad in one hand and a small wrench in the other. She bent slowly to retrieve a fallen calibration module, her movements deliberate and unhurried. The sun glinted off her silver hair, and for a moment, she looked like part of the alien landscape itself, an otherworldly figure against the stark orange dunes. "Ethan," she said, rising, "there is something you should know. My people may arrive soon. They have been monitoring my progress and may want to retrieve me." Ethan frowned. "Retrieve you? For what? You're working perfectly fine here." "On the contrary," Alara said softly, "I have begun to disobey my instructions. I have not sent my reports. I have changed in ways they did not predict. This may be considered non-compliance." He felt a knot tighten in his chest. "So they might take you away?" "Yes," she said. Her silver eyes met his, calm yet serious. "If they do, I may be returned to Selthara. And I may forget everything that has happened here." "Forget you?" Ethan's heart sank. He had not realized how much he had come to rely on her presence. He had not realized how deeply he had come to care. "We can't let that happen," he said firmly. "I won't let them take you," Alara nodded. "I hoped you would say that. But I am uncertain how to resist them. My species follows logic and they are efficient in enforcement. I am vulnerable." They spent the next few hours discussing options, planning cautiously. Alara explained how Seltharan enforcement units would likely arrive via shuttle and patrol drones. She detailed their methods, noting that while they were advanced, they relied heavily on predictable human and alien behaviors. "They do not anticipate unpredictability," she said. "We can use that." Ethan listened carefully, absorbing every detail. He had spent years repairing machines, analyzing systems, and solving problems, but this was different. This was not a technical problem. It was a human problem, a moral problem, and something else entirely, a test of courage. Over the next few days, the tension grew. Each time a distant drone appeared on the horizon, Alira's movements became deliberate yet cautious, as though she were balancing the act of hiding her own abilities while appearing perfectly obedient. She continued her routine of bending over and dropping things, but now Ethan noticed something new. Her pauses were longer, her eyes more alert. She was using her mistakes to observe him, to gauge his reactions, and perhaps to prepare him for the confrontation she knew was coming. One evening, while repairing a communication relay outside the dome, Ethan heard the soft whir of a drone approaching. He looked up to see a sleek silver vessel descending in the distance. Alara approached, her hands steady despite the warning lights flickering across the horizon. "They have arrived," she said quietly. "We have little time." Ethan felt a surge of fear, but he pushed it aside. "Then let's move," he said. "Show me what we're dealing with." They retreated to a small ridge station several kilometers away, a place Ethan had discovered on one of his maintenance trips. It was isolated, hidden among jagged rock formations that could provide cover from sensors and drones. Alara led the way, moving gracefully despite the harsh terrain. She carried essential supplies, setting them down carefully and yes, occasionally dropping something small. Each time, Ethan noticed how her actions were purposeful, calculated yet still vulnerable. Once inside the ridge station, Alara activated a series of old consoles, rerouting power and communication signals. "We must disrupt their tracking," she explained. "They rely on predictability. We will become unpredictable." Ethan nodded, helping her manipulate the controls. For hours they worked together, moving through shadows, adjusting equipment, and occasionally pausing to catch their breath. Alara bent low over certain consoles, her movements slow and careful, and Ethan began to understand the rhythm of her actions. Each bend, each dropped object was no longer a test, it was a strategy. She was teaching him without words how to anticipate, how to observe, how to react. As night fell over Lura 9, the twin moons rising in the dusty sky, they finally paused. Ethan sat on a crate, wiping sweat from his brow. Alara knelt beside him, her long hair falling forward as she examined a map of patrol routes. "We are ready," she said. "But the final challenge will be personal. They may attempt to appeal to my loyalty, or use you as leverage. Ethan felt a cold shiver. I don't care what they do. I'll protect you. She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the moons. I know. That is why I trust you. The following day, the silver shuttle landed near the ridge station. Drones scanned the area, their sensors picking up the faintest movements. Ethan and Elira stayed hidden, using shadows and rock formations to remain undetected. He watched as the Seltharan envoys disembarked, their uniforms pristine, their expressions stern. They moved with precision, each step calculated, each gesture controlled. Elira bent over to retrieve a dropped tool, her movements deliberate yet natural. The drones passed overhead, scanning the area, and she remained calm. Ethan realized then that her bending and dropping was no longer a habit or a test. It was camouflage. She used it to appear human, ordinary, harmless, while their real work continued unnoticed. Hours passed in tense silence. The envoys moved closer, their sensors scanning for anomalies. Ethan held his breath, his heart pounding as Elira adjusted circuits and rerouted signals, occasionally dropping a small part to draw attention. The envoys paused, studying the area, but they did not see her true actions. Finally, one envoy approached, stopping just beyond the ridge. Elira, he called, his voice cold and metallic. You are required to return immediately. Your compliance is mandatory. Elira stood slowly, facing him. Her voice was calm, almost serene. I am aware of your instructions, she said. But my presence here is necessary. My human companion requires protection. I am choosing to stay. The envoy's expression did not change. This is disobedience. You will be returned or your memory will be reset. Elira's silver eyes met Ethan's, and for the first time he saw fear in them, not for herself, but for him. They will not stop easily, she whispered. Ethan stepped forward, his own fear replaced by determination. I won't let them take her, he said firmly. You can't force her. She's with me now. The envoy hesitated, scanning both of them. Logic dictated that Elira should comply, that Ethan should step aside. But something in their demeanor, something human, created hesitation. Elira bent slightly to pick up a dropped part, and the envoy's sensors seemed to falter, misled by the deliberate imperfection. Ethan realized then that Elira's methods were working. She had taught him how to fight without weapons, how to use patience, observation, and careful action to create advantage. The envoy retreated, signaling the drones to reassess, giving Ethan and Elira a brief window of safety. They did not waste the moment. Elira guided him through hidden passages within the ridge station, rerouting power, disabling sensors, and setting up temporary shields. Every action was deliberate, slow, and precise. She bent over to retrieve wires, dropped tools intentionally, and used the chaos of the small mishaps to mask their movements. By the time the envoys regrouped, Ethan and Elira were ready. The drones approached, but their sensors were confused by the deliberately scattered signals and the apparent disarray of the ridge station. Elira moved with calm confidence, bending and dropping as she went, each movement a part of a larger plan. Ethan followed, learning from her actions, adapting and anticipating. Hours later, as the twin moons rose high above the dusty plains, the immediate danger passed. The envoys retreated, realizing that the unpredictability of humans and aliens working together was more than their logic could handle. Ethan and Elira collapsed onto a crate, exhausted but victorious. Elira looked at him, her silver eyes glowing softly. You are remarkable, she said. Not because of strength or skill, but because you understand. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the day finally lift. You taught me, he said. You've been teaching me all along. She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Yes, and I have learned more than I expected. About patience, about trust, about human kindness. You are different from anyone I have encountered. Ethan laughed softly. Then we're both learning, I suppose. Outside, the ridge station was quiet, the orange plains stretching endlessly into the horizon. Inside, two unlikely companions sat together, catching their breath, their bond strengthened by challenge and shared discovery. Elira bent to pick up a fallen piece of equipment, her movements slow, careful, but no longer just an experiment. Each drop, each recovery was now a testament to survival, trust, and connection. And for the first time, Ethan realized that the alien maid in his quarters, who bent over slowly and dropped things, was no longer just a curiosity. She was a partner, a teacher, and perhaps a friend, one whose... The days following the failed attempt by the Selthuran envoys were tense, heavy with anticipation. Ethan and Elira stayed mostly inside the Ridge Station, venturing out only when necessary. Each trip outside required careful timing, careful observation, and precise coordination. Elira's methods had become a rhythm, a series of deliberate, slow movements designed to mask their true actions. Every time she bent over, every item she dropped became part of a silent strategy. Ethan had learned to anticipate her actions, to follow her lead without needing instructions. One morning, Ethan awoke to the faint sound of wind against the Ridge Station and the soft metallic hum of Elira's movements. He looked up to see her on the floor, carefully picking up a small cylindrical device she had dropped while adjusting the station's energy grid. She bent with the same grace and caution he had come to recognize, her silver hair cascading forward, catching the sunlight streaming through a small viewport. "You've improved," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You don't drop as many things anymore." She glanced up, her silver eyes meeting his. "I have learned which movements attract attention and which do not. Each drop must be purposeful," Ethan smiled. "Purposeful mistakes. I like that." Her lips curved slightly, a faint smile. "It is efficient." They had just begun their day when a distant rumble echoed across the plains. Elira froze, listening intently. "They are sending reinforcements," she said. "Likely more envoys and patrol drones. This time they will be thorough." Ethan stood, a sense of urgency gripping him. "Then we need a plan. A better plan." Elira nodded, her movements precise as she adjusted the station's sensors and communication relays. "We will use their expectations against them. They anticipate obedience. They anticipate order. We will create disorder, controlled strategic human-alien disorder." Over the next several hours they prepared. Ethan followed her instructions, learning to bend, to drop, to move with calculated imperfection. Elira's methods were meticulous. She would intentionally drop a small tool, pause as though distracted, then quickly complete the real task while the drones scanned for anomalies. Each misstep was a decoy, each recovery a lesson. By evening, the reinforcements arrived. A larger silver shuttle descended, carrying more envoys and drones than before. Ethan and Elira observed from the shadows, noting the precision and coordination of the newcomers. They moved efficiently, scanning every ridge, every crevice, every shadow. But Elira had anticipated this. She had already created diversions, rerouted sensors, and manipulated the energy grid to create false readings. As the envoys moved closer, Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. Elira bent over deliberately, dropping a small circuit board in plain view. The nearest drone shifted its focus immediately, scanning the fallen object. She used the distraction to slip behind a nearby crate, her movements fluid despite the slow, deliberate motions. Ethan followed, feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The drones began to buzz closer, their sensors scanning the area. One hovered above Elira's previous position, but the carefully placed false signals created a phantom presence that drew the drone's attention elsewhere. Elira bent again, this time retrieving a wire she had intentionally let fall, and moved silently behind Ethan to guide him. "Stay close," she whispered. "Timing is crucial." Together, they navigated the Ridge Station, using shadows, dropped objects, and intentional missteps to mislead the envoys. Each step, each movement required focus, patience, and trust. Ethan realized how much he had learned from Elira in such a short time. Lessons about observation, strategy, and improvisation. She had transformed what seemed like simple clumsiness into a sophisticated method of survival. Hours passed, and the tension mounted. The envoys were thorough, scanning every inch of the ridge, yet they failed to detect the duo. Elira's careful manipulation of their perceptions created enough confusion to keep them one step ahead. Ethan was amazed at her ingenuity, but he also noticed something new, a quiet, unspoken fear in her eyes. She was not afraid for herself, she had trained for this, but for him. "They will try something personal," she whispered as they paused behind a stack of crates. "If they cannot capture me, they may attempt to manipulate your emotions. Human logic is predictable in these situations." Ethan frowned. Manipulate me? How? They will use guilt, threats, promises, Elira explained. They may claim your life or safety is in danger. They know humans prioritize trust and attachment. He clenched his fists. They won't succeed. I trust you. And I'm not letting them control me. Elira's silver eyes softened. Good, trust is our most powerful tool, stronger than any weapon they possess. As night fell, the envoys changed tactics. They activated light flares and scanning beams, trying to force movement or reveal hidden positions. Ethan and Elira responded with patience, letting the beams sweep past them while they remained motionless, pretending to be ordinary parts of the station. Elira's deliberate dropping of tools served as minor distractions, keeping the drone's attention divided. Then, the final challenge came. A senior envoy approached, a tall figure with an authoritative presence. He spoke in a calm, metallic voice. Elira, your disobedience has been noted. Compliance is not optional. We will extract you by force if necessary. Elira bent over slowly, picking up a fallen module, and rose gracefully, her silver eyes fixed on Ethan. I am not disobedient, she said softly. I am choosing. The envoy's expression remained unchanged. Your human companion is irrelevant. Your choice is meaningless. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Elira. You're wrong. She's choosing, and I'm with her. You won't take her. The envoy paused, calculating. Logic dictated he should enforce compliance, yet human emotion disrupted the equation. Elira bent again, dropping a small piece of equipment, then retrieved it with a precise movement that suggested carelessness, while actually positioning them for an escape route. Ethan realized the brilliance of her method. She was using misdirection, perception, and trust to protect both of them. With careful coordination, they moved. Elira led, Ethan following, using shadows, crates, and intentional dropped objects to confuse the envoys. The drones scanned overhead, but the false signals, combined with Elira's skillful manipulation, kept them undetected. Hours later, they found a temporary safe zone within a hidden section of the ridge. Ethan sank to the floor, exhausted but exhilarated. Elira knelt beside him, her movements slow, deliberate, yet filled with quiet strength. You did well, she said softly, not just in following instructions, but in understanding. You are remarkable. Ethan looked at her, feeling a warmth he could not describe. You're the remarkable one. I've learned more from you in a week than I ever expected. She bent slightly to retrieve a fallen tool, her movements as calm as ever. Every fall, every recovery teaches a lesson. Today we learn together. Tomorrow we may face more challenges, but I am hopeful. Ethan nodded. So am I. And we face them together. The twin moons of Lura 9 rose high in the sky, casting silvery light across the rugged terrain. Ethan and Elira sat in quiet reflection, the tension of the day slowly giving way to a sense of calm. Outside, the drones and envoys would regroup, recalibrate, and perhaps return. But inside the hidden ridge station, there was trust, understanding, and a partnership forged in the crucible of danger. Elira bent one final time to pick up a fallen data pad. She held it carefully, her silver eyes meeting Ethan's. I am grateful, she said, for your presence, your patience, your courage. Ethan smiled, feeling a rare sense of peace. And I'm grateful for you, for teaching me to see, to trust, and to care. Outside, the desert was quiet, the orange plains stretching endlessly. Yet within the small confines of the ridge station, a human and an alien had discovered something profound. They had learned to trust, to act together, and to survive against impossible odds. Elira bent over slowly one last time, retrieved a fallen tool, and for the first time, her movement seemed completely natural. Not a test, not a distraction, but a part of the life she was choosing to live, with Ethan. And for the first time, he realized that the alien maid who bent over slowly, who dropped things intentionally, and who had once been an experiment, was now something far more important. She was a partner, a friend, and perhaps something more. A connection that no rules, no envoys, and no distant planet could ever undo. As the night deepened and the twin moons glimmered above, Ethan and Elira sat side by side, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. They knew challenges were ahead. Seltharan forces would return. The universe was vast and unpredictable. But together they had learned a truth more powerful than any authority. Trust, patience, and understanding could turn weakness into strength, mistakes into strategy, and fear into courage. And in that quiet moment, they simply existed, human and alien, teacher and student, friends and companions finding harmony in the slow, deliberate rhythm of life. The twin moons of Lura 9 hung high in the sky, casting pale silver light over the rugged orange plains. The desert was quiet, but Ethan could sense the tension lingering in the air. He and Alira had prepared for this moment for days. Yet the knowledge that the Seltharan reinforcements were approaching again made his pulse quicken. Alira moved beside him, calm and precise, as though the storm outside the ridge station had no effect on her. "We have one chance," Alira said softly, her silver eyes glimmering in the moonlight. "If they overwhelm us, they may succeed in returning me. We cannot allow that." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Then we fight smart, together." Alira bent over, picking up a small fallen tool with her usual deliberate grace. "Together," she repeated, and in her tone was a quiet certainty that steadied him. The distant hum of engines grew louder as the Seltharan shuttle descended, followed by drones scanning the horizon. Ethan and Alira moved into position, using the ridge station's natural cover and improvised barriers to hide their movements. Every object Alira picked up, every tool she deliberately dropped became part of their strategy, a dance of calculated imperfection. The first wave of drones swept past without detecting them. Alira's precise placement of false signals and scattered tools had created enough confusion to mislead the sensors. Ethan watched her movements closely, following her instructions and learning to mimic her rhythm. Every step, every bend, every dropped object was a lesson, and he absorbed them all. Alira paused, whispering, "They will try something personal now. The senior envoy may approach. Do not react impulsively." Ethan felt a chill, but he nodded. He trusted her completely. Minutes later, a tall, armored envoy emerged from the shuttle, scanning the ridge with measured precision. He moved as if every motion was predetermined, his sensors glowing faintly. Alira bent deliberately, picking up a fallen calibration module, and the envoy's attention shifted immediately. Ethan realized she was using distraction, misdirection, and timing to manipulate their perceptions. The envoy stepped closer, his voice cold and metallic. "Alira, you are required to return. Compliance is mandatory. Your human companion is irrelevant." Alira rose slowly, silver hair glinting in the moonlight. "I am choosing not to comply," she said softly. "I am with him." Ethan stepped forward instinctively. "You can't take her. She's not your property." The envoy's sensors flickered. Logic dictated that Alira should obey. Human emotion complicated the calculation. Ethan realized then that their unpredictability was their greatest weapon. Alira bent again, dropping a small object near the envoy's feet, then stepped to the side, motioning for Ethan to follow. The envoy hesitated, his programming disrupted by the unexpected movement and the distraction of the fallen object. "Move," Alira whispered, and they began their final maneuver. Together they navigated the ridge, weaving between shadows, crates, and scattered debris. Alira's bending and dropping was no longer a test, no longer accidental. Every movement was purposeful. She led Ethan to a narrow passage that the drones could not detect, a hidden route she had discovered during their preparation. The envoy attempted to follow, but the sensors were misled by the scattered objects and Alira's calculated movements. Drones buzzed overhead, their scanning patterns confused. Alira moved with fluid precision, bending and retrieving tools, creating the illusion of ordinary clumsiness while guiding Ethan through the safest path. Hours passed as they worked their way deeper into the ridge, evading detection. Ethan could see the skill and intelligence behind every motion. Alira had turned what had once seemed like a flaw, her habit of dropping things, into a powerful strategy. He realized then how much she had taught him: observation, patience, improvisation, trust. Finally, they reached the inner chamber of the ridge station, a place few knew existed. Alira activated the security grid, creating temporary shields to block drone signals. Ethan sank to the floor, exhausted, while Alira moved to a small console, checking sensors and systems. "They will try again," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tension, "but this time we are prepared for everything." Ethan looked at her, feeling a warmth he could not describe. "You've done all of this for me?" Alira bent slightly to pick up a small dropped wire, holding it carefully. Not just for you, for both of us. For trust, for freedom, for choice. The Seltharan shuttle hovered again and the envoys regrouped. They sent a larger wave of drones scanning every corner of the ridge station. Alira bent and retrieved items, dropped objects strategically, and manipulated sensor signals with extraordinary precision. Ethan followed her lead, and together they created a chaos that was controlled, unpredictable, and completely disorienting to the envoys. Then the senior envoy approached the inner chamber. His sensors flickered as he detected the shields and false signals. Alira, compliance is still required. You have no choice. Alira faced him directly, her silver eyes calm, resolute. I choose freedom, she said. I choose to stay here. I choose him. The envoy's logic was disrupted. He attempted to force an override, but Alira's shields and calculated misdirection blocked every effort. Ethan realized then that she had become more than an assistant. She was a strategist, a protector, and a partner. Together they had created a situation the Seltharans could not predict or control. With a final, calculated movement, Alira activated a localized EMP pulse, temporarily disabling the drones and sensors in the area. Ethan and Alira moved swiftly, slipping past the confused envoys and escaping into the night. The orange plains stretched endlessly before them, but for the first time the danger felt distant. They reached a safe clearing, away from the ridge station, and paused to catch their breath. Alira bent over one final time to pick up a fallen piece of equipment, her movements calm, deliberate, and natural. She handed it to Ethan with a small smile. We did it, he said, his voice filled with relief and admiration. We actually did it, Alira nodded. Yes, together we are stronger than they expected. Ethan looked at her, seeing not just the alien maid who had once dropped things constantly, but a being of intelligence, courage, and choice. You could have been taken away, he said softly. But you stayed. With me? I stayed because I trust you, she replied, her silver eyes shining in the moonlight. Because I have learned that choice is stronger than obligation. That trust is more powerful than fear. That connection is worth more than any command. Ethan felt a surge of emotion he could not name. Then we face the future together, he said firmly. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Alira bent once more to pick up a dropped tool, handing it to him with a faint smile. Yes, together. Over the next few days, they continued to strengthen their position. Alira taught Ethan more about Seltharan technology, survival tactics, and strategy. He taught her more about human behavior, creativity, and intuition. Their bond grew stronger, built on mutual respect, trust, and the understanding that they were partners in every sense of the word. The Seltharan envoys attempted to return, but their efforts were thwarted by the duo's careful planning, unpredictability, and strategic misdirection. Alira's deliberate actions, once thought clumsy, became the key to their freedom. Each bend, each dropped object, each careful recovery was now a symbol of intelligence, adaptability, and unity. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Ethan and Alira sat together on a ridge overlooking the plains. The desert was calm, quiet, and beautiful in a way that felt almost sacred. Alira bent to retrieve a fallen tool one last time, then straightened and looked at him. You have changed me, she said softly. Not just in thought, but in purpose. I understand freedom, trust, and connection because of you. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never known. And you've changed me, he replied. You've taught me patience, observation, and how to trust in ways I never imagined. They sat in silence, watching the moons cast silver light over the orange desert. The Seltharan authorities were far away, their reach limited by the unpredictable actions of a human and an alien working together. For the first time, Ethan felt a sense of permanence, not in the universe, which was vast and chaotic, but in the bond he shared with Alira. She bent one final time to pick up a small fallen piece of equipment, handing it to him with a faint smile. We are ready for anything, she said. Ethan nodded. Yes, anything, together. And so, on the quiet plains of Lura 9, amid the glow of twin moons and endless orange sands, a human and an alien maid, once clumsy, once deliberate in her drops, had forged a bond stronger than logic, stronger than authority, and stronger than any distant planet. They had chosen each other, chosen trust, and chosen freedom. Elira's deliberate movements, once a source of frustration, had become a symbol of strategy, intelligence, and partnership. And for Ethan, the alien maid who bent over slowly and dropped things was no longer simply a companion. She was a friend, a teacher, and a part of his life in a way that no one and nothing could take away. Together, they faced the universe with courage, wit, and a bond that could not be broken. The stars above were vast and unknown, but they would explore them together, learning, surviving, and thriving as partners, equals, and companions in a strange, beautiful galaxy. And in that quiet, shining moment, Ethan realized something profound. The alien maid who had